All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this new episode of the Campfire, a new camp show where we try to share as much as possible about the reality of becoming a web developer. Today, I have the immense pleasure of having Olivia Culver with me. Hello, Olivia. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm good.
We're going to have a full hour of going through your journey and the many different experiences you've had to get to where you are right now. I want to say that we are live right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn simultaneously. You can ask your questions live. So you go on the chat, either on any of those three platforms, you ask your questions, and Olivia and I will do our best to answer them. There is also a link that should pop up at some point. Let me actually bring it up. If you want to join us, like, with your microphone and your camera on, you can follow that link here, url.newcamp.co/dial-in. When you click that link, you're going to appear here, and then I'll bring you onto the floor and we can have a conversation. So that's another way of enjoying the show and interacting with us. So without any further delay, Olivia, would you mind introducing yourself a little, and where are you from? Where do you dialing from? And just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have plenty of questions for you.
All right, yeah. So I'm Olivia, and I hail from Michigan, the Metro Detroit area, and I currently live in Troy, Michigan. I am a digital and web coordinator for the Michigan Association of CPAs, but I previously was in healthcare. I have a bachelor's degree in applied health science. I thought that I'd get into healthcare, and I did end up working as a nursing assistant when I first graduated. But it's been a journey since then to where I am now.
So you were a nurse up to November 2019. So right before COVID hit, right? So I was like, oh, maybe it's because COVID was very tough on the medical field. So
Mhm.
what made you think that you didn't really want to be in healthcare anymore? And how do you think, okay, if it's not healthcare, then it's going to be web development? I mean, what made you kind of
Yeah.
balance those two together? And maybe it wasn't that obvious. I guess maybe you really wanted to leave healthcare without necessarily knowing what you wanted to do next. I mean, tell us about that mind shift.
Yeah, so well, I took the job as a nursing assistant in order to get patient care hours for PA school to be a
Oh,
physician assistant.
okay.
And that's what I had in mind when I graduated from college. That's what I thought I would do. But after a year of being at that job and me literally procrastinating on like studying for the GRE and taking
Mm.
that, I needed to take some additional science classes, and I wasn't moving forward on it. Like I just didn't have, I just wasn't motivated enough.
Oh, yeah.
And in addition to that, in my job, I was working in a hospital, and this wasn't my first time in a healthcare setting. I'd volunteered in hospitals and things before, and I actually was a home care nurse during summers in college too. But this was the first time that I worked at a major hospital where I really got to see the ins and outs of healthcare from
Mm.
the employee perspective. And I will just say, I came in with rose colored glasses, and I was dismayed to see that healthcare wasn't what I wanted it to be or what I thought it was going to be. I saw a lot of people burnt out. I saw a
Mm.
lot of people sacrificing their mental and physical health and well being. Coworkers who had been there for years with back problems, foot problems, and people who just like hated their jobs, and
Yeah.
just the bureaucracy of American healthcare, like the way in which a lot of decisions are made by higher ups who aren't the ones who are on the ground actually caring for patients. And yeah, it was just to a point where I recognize that if I were to pursue healthcare, I would have to sacrifice my mental and physical well-being.
Wow.
And that wouldn't just
Yeah.
be for just the period of grad school, because I actually started the job with somebody else who also had dreams of being a PA. And after a year, she left and started PA school. And I caught up with her a while later, and she's like, yeah, I sleep 4 hours a night every night because it's so rigorous and I'm
Wow.
studying all the time. And I just know like
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been able to function. I wouldn't have been healthy. And I probably, it just wouldn't have been a good road for me to go down. So I started looking at other options. And honestly, like this all started in like 2018. And it
Yeah.
was this period of like, I tried and failed with a lot of different things. And I have no problem talking about that or saying that because, of course, in our culture, we focus on the successes. But I'm like, no, I tried to have an e commerce drop shipping business after I learned about that. And that failed. I tried to have a social media marketing agency and I was running
Wow.
Facebook ads for local businesses after taking an online course. And that didn't do as well as I would have hoped. But that is when I started my LLC in that year when I was trying to figure out, I was like, oh, let me try something with business. But everything I was doing was very, I wouldn't say get rich quick, but it was kind of get rich quick. It was kind of like,
You are
it
watching
was,
too many videos, too many videos on YouTube saying, "Hey, do this in 10 minutes and you can really get rich."
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, literally, I was buying these people's courses. I was falling for like, oh, you
Oh,
can make
wow.
money doing this, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, let
yeah.
me just try that because I was so desperate to get out of my job. I really
But
didn't like it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, didn't that open your mind and your eyes to different areas of the business? I mean, that must have had some positive outcome for you, right? I mean, you learned about
Oh,
e-commerce, you
absolutely.
learned about digital marketing, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is that it ended up like I don't believe in like regrets in life. Everything's
Yeah.
a lesson learned.
Hmm.
And I just learned a lot that year, okay? Like
Yeah.
like even through the failed businesses and things like that, even through me pouring my all my extra time and extra money into things that just weren't giving me a return, I still came away with knowledge that I didn't know at the
Mhm.
time, but that I would end up using in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
So during the same time, my brother actually, he was a middle school gym teacher, and he was actually like him and his wife had some kids, and like they were just living off of his income, and it wasn't too much even with him like doing coaching on the side and stuff. So he started a boot camp where he was learning Android development. So
Yeah.
he did that through 2018. And then by the end of the year, he got a new job offer in another state that they'd been eyeing, and he doubled his salary and stuff. And I was like, you know what? Let me look into like web development, coding, programming. And the way I kind of reasoned it, I was like, well, worst comes to worst, even if I don't end up in that field, people say it's gonna be the skill of
Yeah.
tomorrow,
You're going to use that no
so
matter what. Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, well, it'll be good to know how websites work and stuff.
Yeah.
So I started on Treehouse actually, and that was my self-taught journey. And I first did their front end web development track starting in October of 2018, and I really was enjoying it. I
Yeah.
liked that I could be creative with
So you were
it.
full time, right? So were you still doing the nursing? Yeah, you were still nursing.
Yes,
So you were doing
yes,
that learning on the side, right? And
yes.
before you go further,
Mm-hmm,
just want to go a few
mm-hmm.
shout outs. We have
Yeah.
Guillermo here.
Hey.
He's one of your students, and then Emmanuel as well.
Oh, hi. Hey.
And
Those are
apparently
great
also
students.
you are someone. Amira is
Yeah.
kind of going through the same stuff. We have Shim who joined us on dial in. Shim, if you want to join Olivia and I on the floor, we need to have your camera on. There's always a worry that there's something surprising on the other end, so you want to
Yes.
check it out before. And I don't know. Apparently, maybe Brent. So yeah, so you start on Treehouse. You're still working.
Mhm.
So I mean, you need the salary, right? At the end of the day, you have a
Yes.
job. You're not going to last long there, but you're learning on the side. Tell us about. I mean, what was your day to day then? I mean, how it was intense, right? What were your hours like? Did you end up learning to code at 2 a.m. in the morning or something like that? I mean, did that ever
Thank,
happen?
thankfully not, but I did have a rotating schedule. That was one of annoying things about that job.
Yeah.
So some days I could start as early as 6:30 or as late as like 9 or 10 o'clock. So every week my schedule would shift and change. That's why
I
I
see.
needed the flexibility of something where I could be on my own schedule to learn. And I basically kind of worked out my time so that after work I could spend 2 hours programming and learning. So I dedicate those 2 hours and then just kind of free up my time from there. And at the same time, I also was trying to, especially once I was like, okay, like I really want to get into this field, I started to look at meetup groups.
Yeah.
So I'd go to like tech meetups downtown in Detroit. I got into a learning or a volunteering opportunity with an organization called Journey, where basically they have volunteers like help like kids probably age 7 or 8 to like teenagers, um, playing coding games and things like that, kind of getting them into programming at a young age.
Yeah. Using
So I was
Minecraft or Golang or that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I was just looking for any sort of opportunity to get some experience, get into the community, network, like on top of also trying to dedicate, treating it like a part-time job, which is what we say at New Camp, and which is what I tell my students, where it's like, okay, yeah, I was working full-time 40 hours, and then I had a part-time job, 10 to 15 hours learning how to code on the
So
side.
it's being extremely dedicated. Like, I mean, did you have like, were you able to see your friends? Were you able to see your family much? How intense was it that time?
Yeah, I still made time. And also, I mean, looking back, it seems like it was intense, but also I know I definitely took my time. Like I could have gone faster. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it took me from October until March to finish the front end web dev track. And then from there, I still did not feel job ready. So I
yeah.
started their full
Hmm.
stack JavaScript tech degree program. And then I was working on that throughout the rest of the year. But there were definitely times where I took breaks.
Yeah. So,
Like,
it took like a year and a couple of months for you to feel ready. I guess that's what between the
yeah, it
October
took a
starting
year.
front end. Yeah, a year. Gotcha.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, that's very interesting because when you're self-taught, you don't have a finish line necessarily, right? I mean,
Oh.
there's not a certificate that tells you, hey, you graduated. I mean, you can
Hmm.
finish a program, but you always wonder, okay, should I know something else? How did how did you feel ready? You just mentioned after front end you were not feeling ready. How did you feel ready to, I guess, move to the next stage? And maybe actually tell us also what was that next stage for you? I mean, once you had that self
Hmm.
learning experience and knowledge, what was the next step for you, and how did you feel ready to do it?
Yeah. So from let's see, from October's 2018 is when I started learning, and then October 2019, I got a job offer as the web developer and digital marketing manager for an epoxy flooring company that's based here in Michigan. And I had been applying to jobs like crazy. First of
Mhm.
all, for like the second half of the year, probably from like the summer through fall, I was applying to a lot of jobs because at that time in my department, and actually in the entire like hospital, there were some major changes in
Oh,
terms of like roles. They were phasing out one role, and they were expecting people in my position to pick up the slack of that role while
mhm.
not necessarily paying us any more for it. So I was literally doing more work, more labor, more running around. Like this was a job where I was getting 20 or 30,000 steps a day on busy days, and I was starting to have
Some may say it's actually a good thing, but I hear you.
yeah, no, not that many steps. Like not that many steps. Like it was
Yeah,
just
you're right.
ridiculous. I was having problems with like my back and my
Yeah,
legs and stuff like that. So I was really just I was casting a wide net. I was
yeah.
trying to get out anywhere I could, and this position popped up. And short notice, I just went on the interview, and it worked out that I could start basically like right away in that
That's
position.
huge.
So I was like, yep, I'm ready to jump ship. I was so ready to get out of my job. Like
Yeah,
it
I mean,
really,
you
yeah.
felt pressure from the situation at work to really move on, and so you were by the time you were probably in the middle of your full stack, right? So you just
Mhm.
had completed front end, middle of your full stack. It was like, I mean, you had to be ready. I mean, your current job was not an option. You had to be ready, but it's quite remarkable that you found something so quickly. And it was pre-pandemic. And I know you said you went to meetups. Like, what is the I mean, how important was it for you to go to those meetups, to create those networks in your area? Like, did that have any impact or effect on you getting that job that fast?
I don't know if it necessarily had an impact. It's not like I networked to get the job or anything
Yeah.
like that. So I mean, because that's one of the things that people do talk about,
Yeah,
is
exactly.
networking to
Hmm.
get somewhere in the tech field, because a lot of positions are internal, or like just not that many people know about
Yeah.
them. But I'd say what it did was it definitely, being self-taught, I didn't have like a cohort community the way that we offer students that in New Camp. And honestly, a lot of times I was quite alone in my journey. And
Yeah.
with Treehouse, they did offer like a Slack channel that you can go in and ask questions. But I just never like I can be a really introverted person, and I have a bad habit of not asking for help. So
Mhm.
I mean, there have been times like I get stuck on a project, and I literally just like leave it for a week or something, just like completely walk away from it because I got stuck trying to problem solve
Yeah.
something, and I just didn't feel comfortable like reaching out to anyone. So although like the meetups and things that I didn't necessarily like help me get the job, I think it was just nice to be around other people
Yeah.
programming, and it was nice to be around people like talking the sort of like tech jargon that can take a long time to pick up when you're just not in that environment, and that you don't get as much when you're self-taught either, because I never had a live instructor. Like I was
Yeah.
watching
No, yeah,
video
totally.
tutorials and things. So I think it gave me that little bit of like that personal touch to my learning journey that you can miss out on being self-taught.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And so let's talk about that first job and those interviews that you went through. Can you share with us what do you think made the difference? And often, when someone is looking for a job, they hear about, okay, you need to have a project. They're hearing you need to know about algorithms and data structures. They hear, well, but also your soft skills is going to be important. You have to relate and connect with the hiring manager. And also, well, you probably want to look for something local. I mean, there's a plethora of recommendations and things to keep in mind when you're doing your job search. What, in your case, made the difference, you think, for you to get that job?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, funny enough, what really made a difference in me getting that job, because, like I said, I was doing web development and digital marketing.
Yeah.
It was the fact that I had the social media marketing agency,
Oh.
and between that experience and also when I had my e-commerce shop, I dabbled in Google Ads, and with like working on Shopify, and like I dabbled in things that they were like, "Oh, that's awesome that you've got that experience."
Oh, yeah.
So that was like a really big thing. Like even just the things that I feel like, "Oh, I failed that didn't get me
Yeah, those
anywhere,"
those
literally helped
cheap
me.
courses that you bought from those YouTubers, that paid
Yes.
off. That paid off. That's cool. I mean, you're so right. And I'm guessing, was the company a small business company?
Yeah, they're more like a family business
Yeah.
type of feel, but I mean they are a multi-million dollar company, so
Yeah.
they're doing a lot of business, but it is a like
It's kind of,
smaller
yeah, like, I don't
company.
know,
Yeah.
15, 20 people or something like that.
Yes. Mhm.
So in those companies, having someone who's technical but also can understand how technicality or code or website works with digital media advertisement even working your Facebook page, all those things. It's super important because they don't have the resources to have full-time employees doing all of those things. And oftentimes, if you want to hire an external company looking after your Google ads or your Facebook, it's going to cost a lot of money. And very often they don't understand your business enough and they're doing a bad job at it. And so
Mhm.
that's a very, very fair point. I mean, being able to really blend web development or really knowing your way around, design and development and all the adjacent domains can make a big difference. That's super. Thanks for sharing that. There is a question, and you kind of answered it, but maybe you can add something to it from Fission Productions. So you're doing your search, you're feeling the pressure, you have to, but did you feel at that point, or when did you feel like, hey, you're ready, I can do this? Like,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for one, I believe you'll never feel like you're ready, or if you wait until you feel like you're ready, years will pass by.
Mhm.
Because I mean, to me, like, you kind of have to start out in any sort of, I mean, this is like literally a new job in a completely new field for me. um you're gonna be really new to things, and there's going to be a learning curve no matter what. And I feel like, honestly, like, having a job where you have to know that stuff will push you to, you'll be
Yeah.
ready a few months into your job, you'll be ready 6 months, a year into your job. so
Yeah.
so I mean, there is a little bit of like that. um you just have to have the confidence that you can learn it. Like, I think that's one of my biggest strengths, is like, I took on a lot of different responsibilities and duties at this company, even as time went on, like more than just what I was hired for, because my attitude is like, I can learn how to do that. And
Yeah.
I literally just learned how to do stuff that I never touched before, or that I did not have experience with before. And so you have to trust that if you're able to teach yourself the fundamentals, the basics of things, if you're able to teach yourself different, just like paradigms and structures and things like that, that you're going to get into a job where you do not feel fully prepared, and that you will not feel, quote, ready, but you can still teach yourself what you need to know on your job. And honestly, that's probably some of the most valuable learning,
Yeah.
experiential learning. It's going to stick more than just like you doing a project for the sake of doing another project or following a tutorial. It's different when it's like, okay, I have a responsibility. I'm accountable to people. I'm accountable to my job. Like, that just
Yeah.
changes how the learning happens in your brain. And honestly, it probably made my learning journey, for what I started to learn with that job, just like even more, just it
Yeah.
kind of
No,
light a fire under
I
me,
can I can relate.
basically.
I mean, when
Yeah.
you're learning, online on your own or including boot camps, you're kind of creating made up stuff for yourself as an excuse to
Hmm.
learn, right? Your
Yes.
project is going to be a project that you dream of, and you don't have a customer or you don't have. But then when you're in your
Right.
first job, everything is so real, right? The data
Yes.
is real, the customer is real, the challenges are real, and so let
Hmm.
me ask you though. So it actually goes very fast from the moment you start to learn to the moment you get that first job. What is your experience of, let's say, the first few weeks? Like, you're starting a new job, you're confident you're going to be successful, but I'm guessing somewhere, you're like, okay, what's going to happen to me, in a way, right? Like, how much will I know? How much will I struggle? What's your mental state? What's your emotional state during the very first weeks? You're starting that new job. It's a completely different field. Can you share about with us a little bit? Like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I would say, I mean, I like to think my experience was unique, because actually the person I was taking over for was leaving immediately. I had one day of training with
Wow.
him.
Yeah.
And mind you, I'm the only person in-house who does that, because they later hired an IT firm who he ended up being more enmeshed with the company, but that was some months down the
Yeah.
line. So I was basically the one person. There were a lot of things that were like poorly or just like not at all communicated to me. I
Hmm.
knew nothing about epoxy flooring when I started, except for that people put it in their garages. I didn't I was kind of just like left out with no help, with no like senior or anybody else. Like I didn't have a team. I was basically solo in what I was doing. And yeah, the learning curve was very steep for me. The first few weeks, it would go from like, oh, I'm so happy to have this job and, everything's good,
Hmm.
to then I'd make a mistake with something, and I'd be super stressed about a certain
Yeah.
deadline or a request. I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do that, or information that I'm like, I didn't know that I was supposed to know that because nobody ever told me.
Yeah.
So I mean, thankfully I'm really bright, so I was able to like pick things up fast as time went on. But the first few weeks were definitely a mix of emotions. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like it went from, wow, I'm so glad I'm not in healthcare anymore, to, okay, yeah, I'm super stressed about, I have to figure. And you know what's kind of funny? Like when I started, like they had WordPress websites that I needed to
Yeah.
manage. And I saw that in the like in the job description from Indeed. And so I ended up like, I had touched WordPress a little bit years before, but not really too heavily. And I was like watching tutorials on WordPress and stuff. So they're like, yeah, how are you with WordPress? And I was like, yeah, I've worked with it before. Yeah. Mhm. And so that was something that I kind of had to like, I don't know, sometimes you almost have to like fake it a little, or you just got to
Yeah.
stretch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But recognizing that like I picked up WordPress really fast and I know it like the back of my hand now.
Yeah.
And I went on to take more WordPress courses to be able to work in WordPress websites and build them from scratch and to like make a custom WordPress website.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, to start out, there are some things that I kind of like stretched a little bit. And I
And
was like,
it's important for
yeah, I know
folks to know
this.
that. Yeah, I mean, it's important for folks to know that the first job, it can be nerve-wracking at first. You're discovering a bunch of stuff. That's often when you realize how much you don't know, right? But also, and this is where I want to take us, right? When you think about it now, years later, like you made it. Like it was rough, right? But but
Yeah.
but you go back and you're like, yeah, I could do everything I did last time. I mean, 3 years ago, like in 10 minutes now. I mean, this is
Hmm.
very easy for you, I'm sure.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's
there's,
definitely
there's an
gotten a
end of
lot
the tunnel,
easier.
right? There's an end of the tunnel. Great.
Yes.
All right. Let me see what we have here. Okay, let's take a question from Codthin. Hey, Codthin. As a new developer, did you prefer being on a small team to learn multitudes of new things, or join a bigger one where you can focus on one or a few specialties? That's a good
Mm.
question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, I feel like that would have to um, depend on your personality. Honestly, I really liked my first job because I wasn't on a team and I was solo.
Hmm.
And that's just because my entire life, like I said, I'm introverted and I've always been the person to groan when a teacher's like, all right, team up, we're going to do a group project. I prefer to work alone. I've always preferred to work alone on things. And so for me at least, like I liked being able to work alone. And you know what, I did everything. So it was harder than if I was on a team and things were more
Yeah.
broken up, but I got a lot more experience and I got a lot more learning out of being on my own and having to cover everything from, I'm having to understand analytics and how to present, the online sales, because I was the person who was responsible for online sales, and I would track
Wait, hold on. You were
everything.
responsible for online sales as well?
Yes. Yeah. So they had like,
Wow.
they had salespeople who would answer the phone
Yeah.
and sell customers. But I was the person, since I was the tech person in house, I was responsible for their e-commerce.
So the
So I
funnel, the
managed.
customer acquisition, and making sure that everything flow through to someone buying.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
huge.
So
And I guess,
email,
yeah,
affiliate marketing, like social media
yeah.
ads, Google ads, the website, like I was overseeing all of that. Which I think just, yeah, it gave me the knowledge that I have to be able to offer all of those same services in my LLC,
I
Team
was
One
gonna say,
Digital.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That led you to well, let's talk about it then now. I mean, you what we just talked about, it's your yeah, that's your first job, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile now,
Yeah.
as a web developer and digital marketing. But then, um, tell us about. I mean, you have that experience. You know you can do e-commerce. You know you can do digital marketing. You know you can code. So what do you decide to do with all those skills?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny because I just call myself a Jane of all trades.
Yeah.
I don't think I feel like I'd get bored just kind of specializing a little too much.
Mhm.
And even as much as I enjoyed like programming and coding, I personally just didn't want a job where I sat and coded all day or like programmed all day. And thankfully, like in my current position as a digital and web coordinator, I get a little bit of both. Like I get to use both of my or my digital marketing and my web
Yeah.
development knowledge because I manage their website, day-to-day things with the website, and I also am the person who manages social media. So I do a little bit of email. We have an email person, but I'm like the
Yeah.
backup for her. But then that's something else that I can have my hand in. So yeah, it's nice that I was able to find a role where I could use, a plethora of my skills because I don't think I'm one to specialize like that. Like I think I do just kind of because then I don't get bored during the day. I can go from building a new web
Yeah.
page to then like working on social media content and so things kind of stay fresh for me. And I don't really get burned out from my work because there's enough variety in it.
Well, you seem to have an entrepreneur spirit, I will say, really wanting to touch on all aspects of business and actually
Mhm.
getting to the execution of it, and really making the success successful, making the business successful. Do you want to tell us about, I mean, what is Team One Digital? Do you want to share a little bit about that with us?
Yes. So Team One Digital is I'm the team of one, but so it's basically my LLC that I created in order to offer web development and digital marketing services for small businesses and brands, and even if you're a single person, offering a service or something like that. And I got that fired back up like the end of 2020
Mhm.
because I was also again at the job at the epoxy flooring company. It was not the best position for me, and I wanted to make a move. And so as a sort of like backup, I started to work towards freelancing on the
Yeah.
side and getting my own clients so that I could have more flexibility. And I was able to then leave that position in February of last year because I built up a few clients, and I was able to just go based off of my freelancing and, of course, New Camp.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, and we're gonna get to you as an instructor at Newcam, of course. But I'm really intrigued because freelancing becomes I mean, increasingly is a topic that is brought up. If you're self-taught, even if you're a coding bootcamp graduate, as an option, to get your started, get your career started. Um,
Mhm.
so let me ask you this: what is the most challenging you think in being a freelance, and then what is the most rewarding in being
Mm.
a freelance?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny because I really do recommend it to my students
Yeah.
because to me, the nice thing about it is you don't necessarily have to wait to get a job. And it might be easier to get freelance clients, even if it's friends and family,
Yeah.
that you can build real world experience rather than, like we were saying earlier, building projects for yourself for your learning.
Mhm.
This is something real world that you can get that real world experience that I think is really valuable. So, I mean, I think it's nice because, yeah, you don't need permission. You don't need to get hired from anybody. And at least the way that I've treated it, it's cool that I've had the experience of like that being my sole source of income. Or the like main source of my income, but also like now I have a job that's my main source of income. And so that's something I can do on the side.
Yeah.
So it's nice how um you can scale it up or down. That's what
Yeah.
I kind of like about it.
Mhm.
You can scale it to the moon, and if you want to, you can work 80-hour weeks and try and bring in as much money and revenue as possible, or you can just give it a few hours a month, or just kind of, just kind of let it sit on the back burner until you're ready for projects or clients again. So that's something that I think is a nice bonus of it is you can keep it with you even if you get a job.
Yeah.
You can still, like, I still have some freelance clients that I work with, and that's just an extra little source of income that I've got going. But last year, with it being my main source of income, I learned the pains. I learned the
All right. So
pains.
what are those things then?
So one would be the feast and famine cycles. So I've had
Oh,
times where it would just happen that I get a lot of projects at once. And so I'd be working a lot. And I mean, the money was good. I was happy about that, but I was working a lot. And then there'd be times like, okay, the projects end, and then it kind of slows down, and then like one of my biggest clients ended up stopping their services after a few months.
yeah.
And so then like my income just like dropped all of a sudden, where you kind of like have to, it's not stable, right?
Yeah.
It was the experience of like I did not have stable, every
Yeah.
other
But it's
week
not there's no
paychecks coming in.
safety of income. And is it predictable? Like did you have notice from your client that that we're gonna stop the services, or did it just happen and you had no idea?
Not too much notice. The notice
Yeah.
came when I gave them the invoice for like the previous month's work, and it was like, hey, we're not gonna re-up for next month. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to live with that. That's
Yeah.
fine. So yeah, like the way in which, because the income's not stable, one of the things I also had a hard time with, was when it comes to working with clients who are a fit. It's different from working in a job because now, like,
Say
I
that again. I'm sorry.
consistently,
Working with
oh,
clients that are fit.
oh, that are a fit for you so that
Oh,
you work
yeah,
well with.
interesting. Yeah.
That's something that was really important to me that I
Mhm.
learned over time, where you work with a lot of different people and a lot of different businesses, and there would be some people who, for example, I've had the option to start working with a certain company, but I did not feel comfortable with the way in which their like business practices were, or their company
Oh,
culture, or just the
mhm.
way in which or with the client themselves, like the owner, where I could have used the money from that project, but I decided that I was going to hold to my values and
Yeah.
only work with people that I felt good and comfortable working for. And so that meant saying no to money and to
Oh,
projects, or that meant I would kind of do trial work with the
yeah.
customer, and then just not really like the way we were working together, and have to say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not actually going to keep going on with any
Wow.
future projects, and I wish you the best. So there's got to be, like, it's not all roses, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with a plethora of different people, personalities, and businesses, it can be tough to juggle that and to recognize do I say yes because this would pay the bills, or do I say no because I feel like they're kind of unethical, or just like
Yeah,
whatever that just doesn't sit right with you.
that makes sense. Did you have any issue with customers not paying the bills?
Um, Thankfully, no. I
That's
never
good.
had that issue,
Yeah,
thankfully. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's another thing that,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that can happen, right?
Yes, that can
Yeah.
happen too.
So your customers, were they kind of anywhere on the internet, or were they local to your region? I mean, where did you find them? Yeah, can you give us an idea of that?
Yeah, so most were local because
Okay.
actually what I did, I didn't want to pay a lot for ads to get the
Mhm.
word out about my business. And so I paid for ads on Craigslist actually. And
Ooh.
they're
Yeah.
$5 for an entire 30 days. And I
Mhm.
put out an ad in like the computer or tech section, talking about my services. And I was able to get a couple of offers that way. And there's actually two of my clients that I work with now are actually from Craigslist, and I'm still working with them. So that was one. Like, Craigslist is something most people don't think about, but I'm
That's a
like,
great tip. That's actually a
yes,
great tip. I'm
yeah.
guessing as well. That's how you could get it in business with some shady people. I'm
You,
having a guess.
yes, you have to vet people. You've got to have that discernment as well too. But I've been really lucky to have found, like, and these are some of my favorite clients, both women in the area who I've worked well with, like, personally, where it almost feels like friends kind
Yeah.
of. And so those are the type of client relationships that just I love, where I work really well together with them. But other than that, I've had other leads come through. One was a job that I applied for, and I was interviewing for a different position, but she was like, I need help with some marketing stuff. Can you do that for me? So that was how I got some work. Somebody else reached out to me on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and was just like, hey, I saw that you do this. So I mean, for me, I just didn't want to get into a place of, like, I didn't want to spend a lot of money on ads, and I also did not want to have to compete for, like, really low wages on places like Upwork or Freelancer,
Yeah, and
and
I hear
in
those
those types
platforms
of
are,
sites.
yeah, I mean, those platforms are more and more expensive as well for freelancers. Like I've been told recently that to respond to a job as a freelancer, you have to pay. Like it's pretty tough. Hey, I just want to say hi
Mhm.
to Don, who's with us. I mean, speaking of freelancer, who has a huge following, Don is here. If you don't know Don, he has a fantastic channel on YouTube. Real talk about being a web developer or learning to become a web developer, either self-taught or coding bootcamps. He has a ton of coding bootcamp reviews. So hi Don, thanks for being with us. All right, so well, let's talk about New Camp a little bit then. So
Okay.
you're a freelancer, you
Mhm.
and well, you're looking for customers, and so you find New Camp. So tell me about, well, how did you go about finding us, and what it's like to be an instructor with New Camp as a freelancer? Like, what's the cons as well? I mean, go for it.
Mhm. Yeah, so I probably applied to New Camp in late 2019 when I was on a spree of applying to a lot of places because I wanted to get out of my nursing job.
Oh,
And so I'm not, like, honestly, I don't really remember applying. But I don't
it
remember,
just
like, I
happened.
was like, I'm not the person who, like, keeps track in a spreadsheet of, like, every job. Like,
Yeah.
somewhere along the line. But then I remember getting an email back about an interview, and I was like, teaching. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
me teaching? But I was like, hey, why not? Like, I might as well go for it. I was
So,
curious.
and were you incorporate? I mean, were you in your LLC at that time, or were you kind of in your mindset? Were you a freelancer, or were you really looking for a job? What was your mindset at the time then?
Well, at that time, that was like, it was literally, it's kind of funny. It kind of overlapped with when I got the job at the epoxy flooring
Oh, I see.
company.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was getting that job was happening, but then I also was like, interviewing for new camp as well, because I was like, hey, why not? And also, it ended up being a really good way for me to keep up my coding knowledge,
Yeah.
because I wasn't coding as much in my job, where I was working in the back end of WordPress, not really using much HTML or CSS. And so like I kind of also would have like forgotten about so much of that if I wasn't using it in order to teach with new camp. So it ended up working out, where I was like, let me give this a try. And I taught in person in downtown Detroit in
So let's
February
talk about that.
2020.
Let's talk about
Hmm.
that. And first, you're right. The best way to learn is to teach.
Yes.
uh, so your first course with us was Bootstrap. And let me actually say, let's move fast forward. You've taught the Bootstrap course, which is the very first course, 5 weeks long, in the full stack curriculum and front end as well, 16 times. Your average rating, do you know what it is?
4.8.
Yes, you looked it up probably.
Yes.
4.81, 4.81 for a total of, 626 students rated you. So it's a phenomenal rating. And I must say, for a very first, I'm looking at your first bootcamp course that you taught. That's in January 2020, right before COVID hit. You were at WeWork.
Yes.
Average rating for a very first time, 4.772, which is amazing. I mean, for a first
Yeah.
time, because usually, you have kind of have the gist. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing necessarily, but congrats. So, yeah, tell us what it's like to teaching, and maybe actually tell us about that first time if you remember it. Like, what was it like
Yes. Yeah,
teaching
I just
in person at the time?
Yeah, I think it was good that I got the experience teaching in person. Sorry to all the
Yeah.
other instructors who aren't getting that experience. But I think it was good because I got to relate to my students
Mm,
in person with everything. And we were in a WeWork room. I'd always get a room with a whiteboard,
yeah.
and I'd be able to like write and illustrate stuff to like explain it for them. And I'd say that my first cohort really did push me, because
Mm,
I had people who were just like not quite getting concepts as quickly. And so it challenged me to break it down and
yeah.
to break it down more, and to like find a simple way of explaining things, or to illustrate them on the whiteboard if I could, or to just find a way of teaching that really like challenged me right off the bat, where I had to think more deeply about the material in order to convey it in a way that students will understand. And I also just learned like not to assume people just are like absorbing and getting
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And so like I'll go slow, I over explain if anything, and I make sure that I'm leaving room for, okay, does anybody have any questions? And just like making sure people have time to let it sink in. But also, like, do you need me to explain it in a different way? Do you want to see a drawing or something like that? So it was a really good, like I really enjoyed that first class. Plus I
Yeah.
got the I was able to experience just the sheer fulfillment of it all, because the way I saw it then was like my day job was more robotic work of like get more sales, like
Yeah.
just increase numbers and stuff. But this was like kind of more heart centered, where I was helping people and I was having an impact on people in a way that was just so positive and fulfilling. And I actually come from a family of teachers. I told you my brother was a
Oh,
teacher,
yeah.
my
That's right.
mom's a teacher, and she just retired a few years ago, but she taught for most of my life. And I have always been around education for that matter. I've always hung out in my mom's classrooms and things like that.
Mm.
And I always was like, "Ugh, I can never be a teacher," because she was an elementary school teacher. And I was like, I'm not working with babies. But then I found that I still do have a penchant for teaching. I just
Yeah.
prefer to teach adults.
Yeah.
And it's just really fulfilling work. That's why I continue to do it now, because I just love to be able to assist people on this journey, to help them have light bulb moments, to help them understand things that are difficult and challenging concepts to get right away.
Yeah. And I want to talk about a misconception of what being an introvert really is about, because you've said that a few times, right? And people think that, if you're an introvert, you're not going to be able to work in teams. It's going to be hard for you. And maybe you're not going to be able to teach because, why would you put yourself with other people for 4 hours? And I'm an introvert myself, but there is something about still wanting to be around people because it does bring some level of energy.
Mm.
What I love to ask you, why would you put yourself, with other people for 4 hours long? I mean, what does it bring you as an introvert? And why are you, yeah, why do you do it?
Yeah. So, I'm, the introvert in the sense of the definition of that's how I recharge is my
Yeah,
alone time.
yeah.
But knowing that about myself, I can be out around people, as long as I balance it out with that alone time. So it's funny. Most Saturdays I teach, I'm not doing anything afterwards. Like I'm relaxing. I'm not hanging out with people. Like I'm not doing anything afterwards. So that's one thing I always keep in mind. Like I can't then go out to a social event. Yeah, forget about it. But for me, like it's in line with my values. So as much as I love to be alone, I also value human relationships and I
Yeah.
value other human beings in a really fundamental way, of realizing that, that's where a lot of our value and our fulfillment and our joy in life comes from. And the thing with me as an introvert is like, I don't need a lot of time with people to get that joy and fulfillment, but I still seek it out. And I intentionally
Yeah,
seek it out
that's
because
right.
otherwise I could just be really to myself and lonely, but missing out on an entire dimension of human experience of just getting to interact with and meet with other people.
It's very true. I think being an introvert means you get your energy from being alone, but it doesn't mean that you get your happiness from being alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your happiness still is about those human interactions, about having emotions with others. So it's really just about the energy piece, not we don't like others. It's not true at all. We love being with others. It's just we
Yeah.
need time on our own.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I just need to balance that time.
Yeah. So how is so you had that first experience in person. How is it different now that pretty much it's online? The Saturday session, the workshop is online. Like, what did you feel was different? What is different with the students? How they engage? Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah. So, one of the most obvious things I noticed right away when we went virtual was student engagement went down because
Yeah,
it's easier to turn off your mic and turn off your camera and to just like sit in a dark room and not really answer questions or talk to anyone else in a way in which you kind of can't. Ignore other people when you're physically in their
yeah,
presence and you're sitting in a room facing one another. Like you can't get away from people at that point. So like that was a big thing for me to see it go from like it being really engaging to be in person. So like,
yeah,
oh, okay, I'm gonna have to really kind of pull this out from people and drive home the point that you're gonna get more out of this experience by talking and engaging and talking and working with your classmates and asking me questions. And so to me it's just like I let people know, but I don't badger and push them too much. And thankfully, more times than not, I've had more engaging cohorts, though it is very difficult when I get
yeah.
a cohort and there's like no one's extroverted, outgoing, or engaging. And so I'm the one who's got to like bring the energy, and get everybody like, hey, just randomly call on people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
So you're
yeah,
not
that's
you're not hardcore kind of requesting or requiring students to turn on their camera, for example, or their mic.
No, I remind them every session, but
Yeah,
if somebody
it's
wants to
harder.
leave it off,
Yeah,
it's just like, well, you're the adult who's paying for this, and that's the same as going to college and wanting to skip class. Okay,
yeah,
but you're paying that for you're paying the college to take
yeah,
that credit, and you're choosing to skip it. So,
yeah. What's the point? Yeah,
yeah.
very true. So let's talk about, geez, the time goes fast. I want to talk about something we actually discussed briefly when we were in the green room, I guess we can call it that. Um, you've spent your journey and you've worked. Are you still here? Oh, what just happened? Did I lose you, Olivia? Is it me? Oh, there you go.
Okay, yeah, is that
Yeah,
working now? Okay.
yeah, it's working. Huh, I'm not sure what happened here. I think it may be on my end. Okay, you're back. So you spent, yeah, you're freezing. Yeah, I think it's okay. I
Um,
see your video kind of stopping at some point, but is everyone seeing Olivia okay online? And as I say that, we have to wait 9 seconds for people to hear us on the other end and kind of responding. So it's kind of weird.
yeah, okay.
We'll see. Um, no, but I can see you now. So you spent your journey becoming a web developer, working for two different companies, I think now, and having
Hmm.
your own, I think your own business. Um, None of those companies have been tech companies,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
so and you've learned a lot from that. Can you tell us what it meant for you to really, I mean, being those companies that are not their core and their product is not being a tech company, versus maybe going trying to work for Microsoft or Facebook or things like that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I never really had the desire for a tech company. And one of the things about working a non-technical company that a lot of people might not realize is that they need web development services too. They need
Yeah.
programmers, they need web developers, just the same as tech companies do. And one of the really cool things about my work experience so far is I've been able to learn a lot about random industries that I knew nothing about before starting to work there. So it's like I work for a state society for certified public accountants. I hardly knew anything about the accounting field before, and that's something that I keep up on and can understand and talk about now. And same with epoxy flooring, I could tell you how to install it. Like I know how it
Great.
works. I understand like the science behind it and everything. So for me, it's just kind of I just want to highlight the way in which like you don't have to work at a tech company in
Yeah.
order to be in tech. Like you can be in tech, you could be a programmer, an app developer, a web developer, and work in a non-technical company, and you can gain unique skills like needing to communicate technical language to people who don't work with technical things. That's how it is as a web coordinator. What I do now, I have to talk to other departments about their web pages, and they are not tech people. But
Mm.
I have to communicate in a way that they can understand and I can understand what they're saying. And so it takes some unique skills that I think pose kind of a fun challenge.
It's interesting. That's very related as well to you being a teacher, right? Being able to,
Yes.
break down concepts, make things more simple in terms of how you present them. So
Yes.
it's interesting. You're talking about, experiencing new industries. You come from I mean, your original industry is healthcare, right? Working as
Mhm.
a nurse. Have you ever considered going back to that industry with your knowledge of of that industry as a web developer? Like, is that something that crossed your mind? Do you want to do something like that?
Oh, definitely. That's what I thought I was going to do initially when I started learning to
Oh,
program was, oh, I can work in a health tech startup or
yeah.
health something. And I'd be open to that further down the line. But I also realized I can go anywhere. I can do
Yeah.
anything. That's the nice thing about technological skills nowadays. Everybody needs them. You can go anywhere. You can go to any company and your skills will be needed.
And you know what? So let me recap it for you because I think it's not the last time we're going to hear from you. You know digital marketing, you know website, you know coding, you know epoxy. Great. But you know
Yes.
accounting now as well.
Yeah.
You know digital ads. You're building a ton of skills that really will turn you, and actually has turned you already, into a very strong entrepreneur. You know, having all those different elements, accounting. I mean, you need to have some sort of accounting knowledge, to manage your
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
So where do you see yourself in the future? Do you see yourself more being, employed in a company, or do you have aspirations to start your own thing and maybe double down on your LLC or freelancing? I mean, what do you want to
Yeah.
do next?
Yeah, so I've definitely thought about I do have an entrepreneur spirit, and so I feel like eventually I'll end up doing that again. However, what I realized last year was I needed more job experience, and
Hmm.
I needed more working experience before maybe setting off on my own again. And so yeah, like I don't know where it's quite going to take me. It may take me even in the direction of another business. I have a lot of interest in a lot of hobbies, jane of all trades, not just in career but also just like life. So it could take me, I'm guessing I will be an entrepreneur again, like just that be my main thing. But that might be further down the line after I gain more skills, more knowledge and experience, because that was one of the drawbacks I kind of felt last year,
Hmm.
was like I wish I knew more, or I wish I just had more experience by the time I was doing that. And so I'm taking the opportunity to get that experience now.
Great. Well, you could be a founder for your next company or a co-founder. I think you'll be a fantastic co-founder as well, with
Hmm.
all the things that you know. So hey, Olivia, we're on time. It's been a real pleasure having that conversation with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. We didn't. I don't know if, yeah, you mentioned you're in Michigan, so it's kind of late for you. So really appreciate doing that on a Friday
Yeah.
night. Um, I'm looking forward to your next course with your students. They all seem to really appreciate the dedication and the attention that you give them. So thanks a ton. And yeah, really thank you. Thanks everyone online who asked their questions. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks for Don for joining us as well. And well, we'll talk soon. And you know what? If you're joining New Camp, you may have Olivia as your bootstrap instructor. Who knows?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right. Take care. Have a good one.
Thank you, Ludo. Thanks for having me on.
All right. See you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.